few technical difficulties, so we are still waiting on our guest speaker to join. He is trying, but just having some problems. So we're going to go ahead and get started. But thank you so much for joining. You were watching Sailing Smarter in the Florida Keys. I am the sailing specialist with Navionics. We make nautical navigation software and an app and the chips that go in chart plotters. Thank you also to CITO for co-sponsoring this webinar. So at the end of the webinar, we'll talk about the discount that CITO is offering. And so our guest speaker tonight is Captain G-Dub. He is a professional sailing instructor and owner of Florida Keys Sailing. Hopefully he'll be able to join us soon. He the school that he teaches at, he founded, is in the Florida Keys, is the Florida Keys Sailing, and is one of the leading schools in Florida, and also is a leading provider of bareboating in the Florida Keys. He teaches principles of sailing, currents, best practices, and also actually uses Navionics as part of his sailing and his instruction. I have been sailing in Florida and the Bahamas and the Caribbean for about 10 years, and I did take about a year off and sail the Caribbean and Bahamas full time, just cruising, my husband and I. So I've got some sailing experience in South Florida and the Bahamas, and we actually kept our boat, one of our first sailboats, in the Keys as well. So I've got some good stories about sailing in the Keys also. But hopefully if Captain G-Dub can get called in, he'll have some good stories for us as well. One quick thing for you, questions and answers. If you have questions, use the Q&A in your tab at the top, or actually you can move the tab around. So Captain G-Dub is asking me a question about how to join. Hold on just a second. I'm going to mute you and see if we can get him joined in. Okay, so good. We have Captain G-Dub in now. Let me unmute you. Okay, give it a shot, Captain.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Did you hear that?
Yep. So it sounds like I can hear you. So we were just finished up the intros.
Okay.
Let me get back to where we were. Okay, so I finished up the intro, And sorry, everybody, about the delay. So we were just talking about if anybody has
Technical difficulty.
Yeah, always. If anybody has any questions, they can use the Q&A in their panel, and the questions will come to both of us. And if we don't get to your question, then we'll answer them via email afterward, if at all possible. Also, you will get an email after this webinar with a link to the recorded webinar, and the recorded webinar will be available on YouTube as well, on the Navionics channel. So if you have friends that want to see it, you can show it to them later. And let's get you as close as you can get to the microphone, Captain. Sounds like some people might be having a hard time here.
All right, is that better?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so what pieces do you want me to take over?
Okay.
I'll
go through and have some questions for you. Right now, I'll just go over kind of some of the things that we're going to talk about. Today, we're going to talk about some principles of sailing, but more likely about how it applies in the Keys, especially how you can plan for currents and route, and how you can plan your routes. Changing your schedule, say if winds or currents are shifting, how much the depth and the sand shift in the Keys, how much you need to plan for that. When is the best time to sail in Florida? Best locations. Captain has given us some cool places to check out, some anchorages and overnight spots, best route through the Keys, and also some tips on vacationing in the Keys. So first off, I know, Captain, you do use the Navionics app, and especially in regards to current. So can you tell us how you use the Navionics app for current and what you teach your classes?
All right, so I actually require all of my bareboaters and students that end up taking boats off to have Navionics. My use of Navionics is some of my boats have a depth issue in terms of not only in the water, but also the 7 Mile Bridge. As you know, most bridges in the Keys, the Benetos are 65 feet in height. So it's very important that they go under the bridges having enough clearance, so that once or twice a day they can use it. So specifically in terms of the Keys, there's a reason why around the world the Keys has a highest amount of gold, and that's because the Spanish ships always came aground when it came to the corals. So that's no different than people sailing in the Keys thinking that set and drift or falling to leeward doesn't get them into some trouble. So you want to talk more specifically about that, high tide, low tide?
Yep. So the information that I had for our viewers is a lot of people don't know that the Navionics app can give you the tides and the currents. So here on this slide, so you can reference it later, I have given you a quick reference for how to access the currents in the Navionics app. Just have to open the app, click on menu, and then weather and tides, and then you click on tides for more information, for more detailed information. So this is very commonly used, especially with sailing. Of course, it's much less commonly used with the power boaters, but of course, everybody here is interested in sailing. I know we use this all the time when we're sailing, and especially in the Keys, because also the depth in the Keys can be kind of sketchy in some areas because the sands are shifting. So that kind of takes us into the next topic. How much does the bottom shift in the Keys? How often should people that are sailing in the Keys update their charts?
I'm actually getting a breakup in the communication. Is that a question you asked me? I'm sorry.
Yep. So how much do you see that the bottom shifts in the Keys? And so that kind of reflects how often we should update our charts for the Florida Keys.
Okay, so since I saw this on the slide, I actually went, and most of the charts actually of the Florida Keys, the datum is 1989. And so I started to take a look at the app and the difference between most datum charts, referring to the marathon specifically, and your app is actually more accurate than the charts, paper charts I have, charts I've purchased within the last year or so. So in that regard, why that's important is because while I don't think it shifts tremendously, and I think it has to do with kind of the coral bed, that shift around land, obviously, as you know, current is always strongest around land, is why I found it to be more of a variation. I'll give you an example. So if you look at this, if you go, well, if you were to be in the app right now and go towards Boot Key Harbor, the entrance into Sisters Creek has shifted 2 years between the datum chart and your app. And your app correctly shows the depth of what it is now, what I believe it to be now. So much so that I don't let my larger boats go in and out of Sisters Creek.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, that's a good point. Especially after storms in the Keys, there are shifts in the bottom, and the good thing about Navionics is that the boaters that use Navionics can contribute to the data in the charts. So Sonar Charts Live is a feature that Navionics has, and that collects data as the boaters are traveling and will update the charts real time on their chart plotter. But also this data is uploaded to the Navionics servers, which means that other Navionics users, when they update their charts, will get this data. So Navionics has the latest data and the most up-to-date data out of any charts, because we pretty much crowdsource depth information, which lets boaters help other boaters. Also, you can upload your data from chart plotters, and there are instructions on the Navionics website for how you can upload your data through using your chart plotter as well. So Navionics, people that use Navionics are empowered to help themselves and help other boaters as well. So do you have any tips for getting close to islands but not running aground?
Yeah, don't.
Don't. This is one of the questions that I see a lot in forums.
Maryland, and while people, and while you have different parts of the U.S. has, you know, currents, obviously, I've never met a place where I've seen so many groundings from sailboats. I know that we have a sea tow here, so I'm sure they're loving that part of it. But you know, the happens is sailors that don't invest in their education or don't understand set and drift will always try to nudge up against a corner, or try to cut into, you know, a channel or something like that too close. And you know what they're not recognizing is just because doesn't mean you're not sliding into it at some point. So you know, I always try to tell people, just take from the corners of their, you know, the bridges and where it is around land. And as you know, just looking at Navionics, there are shallows, you know, good mile or 2 miles off of shore. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist to be, you know, shallow. It's a funny thing about the sun, how it relates to the shallow water here, is you can't always see depth. And I watched the boat do it tonight, actually, literally right in front of us. He went over a piece of about 400 feet of 7-inch water. And he sat there and said he had no idea what was happening. So give yourself enough, you know, enough distance and enough time.
Okay.
To answer your question.
What do you think that the recommended draft would be for sailing in the Florida Keys?
You know, most of my boats are, you know, other than the boats that headed up to do the ocean runs. Honestly, 4 or 5. If you could get a 5-foot boat, they're what they call snowbirds, and they're coming in with some large draft boats. There's a good size one off of Alamorada right now that try to run into a channel. And so if you don't have a very strong engine and you get in current, they're larger drafts. So sometimes it's not a perfect draft for anything. I see some boats trying to go into some really narrow places, and that's awful risky. So I would say 4 or 5 is about my average boat.
Okay, yeah. When we were sailing in the Keys, we had a little over 4, and it worked most of the time. Our slip was about 3 feet, so we actually ended up we did have to call Seatow a couple times just to finish getting ourselves out of the slip, but we did have a membership, and they were great about it. So we do have a question: is Angelfish Creek open to 5-foot draft to transit from Biscayne to Hawk?
Okay, so there's a few of these that I absolutely avoid. I just, it's, I've heard people say, yeah, I go through there all the time. I think it's one of those things that if you're not really familiar, stick with some of the bigger channels. It's just, other than Marathon, Alamorada, if you go to Stock Island and Key West, I see boats that are, look like they're anchored out that have been sitting there for years that they can't move out. They're too shallow. So they go in a high tide and just can't make it back out. Can't get towed. But I've never gone through it. Sorry about that. Wish I had more knowledge for you.
You can also check if you have questions about specific data in a place, in a certain place, and you don't have the Navionics chip yet, and you don't have the Navionics app, you can download the app, but you can also look up the data that's available in any location by going to the web app on the Navionics website. So it's web app, webapp.navionics.com, or you can just go to the Navionics website and there's a link for web app. And that is where you can see all of the data that is available in the Navionics charts. So it's easy for you to check out depths as well, just using the internet. So you can just go to the Navionics website and then web app, and you can look it up as well. We did have a question about if the crowdsourcing offered through Navionics is available on a handheld device. And the answer to that is yes, in a number of different ways. But the way that I use it is that I have the Navionics app on my cell phone and also on my iPad. And I have what's called a Vexillar T-Box, which is a transducer and a little black box that makes a Wi-Fi signal. And anybody that's on the boat that has a smart device that can turn on Wi-Fi can connect to this Wi-Fi signal. And the Wi-Fi signal will essentially transmit the transducer's data to your phone or tablet so that the depth is real time on your screen, and you also get a reading of a sonar reading. So it's just like a fish finder. You can also collect all this data. This data is collected if you turn on Sonar Charts Live behind you as you go, so that your charts are automatically updated. And then when you get back to internet signal, that data is uploaded to the Navionics server so that it can help other boaters as well. It's normalized and it's put through algorithms so that so we make sure everything's accurate. Then so even with just a cell phone, if you have a Vexillar T-Box, you can actually participate in the crowdsourcing as well. Just check in the other questions we have here. What's the best transit spot then for leaving Biscayne, Captain?
I don't go. I stay to ocean. All my charters stay to ocean, and we don't go to Biscayne Bay at all. Anybody else? Anybody else answer that?
You guys can use the Q&A or you can actually use chat as well if anybody wants to answer that.
It's got some deep areas in it.
Okay, so we'll see if anybody answers, and we'll move on and see what other questions we have. So one of the things that's
now that my video's off. Thank you.
Yep. Turn your video off, hoping that we could get the your audio to come through more consistently. You're breaking up a lot, so.
Okay, sorry about that.
So Steve actually says there is a plotted channel all the way from Miami to Key West. So he points that out to others on the call. Thanks, Steve. So how do you update your chart in the Navionics app? If you're using the Navionics app, you open your Navionics boating app and then click menu and then click update all. Then all of the charts that you have downloaded to that device will update to get the latest data. That latest data, of course, is going to include all the data that's collected by Navionics, but also from other people as well, the crowdsourcing that we were talking about, so that you'll have the absolute latest data. And as you can see, a before and after type picture, when the contour lines were not as detailed before, oftentimes they're much more detailed after you do an update. So just be sure that when you go out, you do an update on your app so that you have the latest charts in that area. So when you're planning a route in the Keys or anywhere else, there's some factors that you want to consider when you're planning your route. Of course, one of them is your time frame. Of course, because if you take a week off of work and you go down to the Keys for a week, you might want to plan differently than if you're cruising and you have 3 months to travel the Keys. You want to also consider, of course, wind direction and strength, the overall weather forecast. You can also get weather through Navionics app as well, in the same way that you get your currents. You want to consider currents, and you want to make sure that you're familiar with the route and your destination. What are some of the things that you consider, Captain, when you plan your route?
Leaving enough time to make sure that you can get out. I was out today. Quite a lot of vessels going, northbound from Key West that were. I think some people just they like to see the shoreline, but the Keys has a lot of shallow areas that are. Is definitely in the Keys. You need to make sure that your fuel stops are planned well enough. Weather is something that actually happens on top of you here. Sometimes it doesn't come from a far away distance. And then I overheard a conversation from some of the marinas where people are not planning well enough for dockage or service. Boat yards are going to be able to pull them up, or that the marinas are already booked.
So you're going in and out a lot, Captain. I'm going to try to summarize what you said. That weather is important to consider in the Keys, and always have a particular place in mind to go in and find a good place to stop and get some cover, because weather can happen on top of you. It doesn't especially come in from far away. And also, if you are sailing or you have your boat docked in the Keys during hurricane season, you want to make sure to plan ahead for the instance that a hurricane does hit, because sometimes people don't plan ahead and then you're kind of stuck because everyone else has planned ahead, and now there's no way to pull the boat out and nowhere to go. That's definitely true of any place in Florida. There are a lot of places further up north. There's a canal that goes all the way through from the ocean into Lake Okeechobee, and we actually see quite a few large like 40-foot or more sailboats in the canals in Okeechobee because of this. People will bring their large boats into the canals there. It's much safer than the Keys or a lot of other coastal areas in Florida. So that is one option for if you find yourself in the path of a hurricane and you need someplace to go. In Navionics, you have the option to route a specific route. So you can make a manual route or an automatic route. The auto routing is a feature that you have to make sure that your depth is set correctly in the app, and it will remind you of that. If you haven't set it, I think the default is something like 33 feet, and it'll say your depth is set to 33 feet. Do you want to change this? Your draft is set to 33, and so once it has the information about your boat, it can plan a route for you. You just tell it the start and stop points. And let's see if we can get this this video to work. This is a video on how you can create routes in Navionics boating. It's very short, but our national sales manager, who's probably on this call as well, made this video himself. It's going to tell you how exactly
Hi, I'm Paul
you do
from
this.
Navionics, and this is how to create a route on the Navionics app. Creating a route on the Navionics app. Hi, I'm Paul from Navionics, and this is how to create a route on the Navionics app. Creating a route on the Navionics app is very simple. Just go to Route, Manual Route to activate the Nav module. Now simply tap the screen. That's your starting point. Route number 1, route number 2, route number 3. Over here on the left is all your information on your distance between the routes, your total mileage, mileage between routes, ETA, fuel burn, anything you want to set up is over here on your left. If you want to edit, simply tap one of the icons and move it to a different spot. Once you're ready, press go, and the nav module will take you down the route to your final destination.
So the Navionics routing is really a neat thing because you can do the auto route to get an idea of which way to go, and then I actually do a manual route as well just to check it and see if there's anything in there that I didn't think of. And it's kind of like checking the road in front of you when you're driving instead of just watching the GPS. Okay, I'm checking the some of the questions and things like that. The crowdsourcing on a handheld device, I think what you mean is just a GPS handheld, like not a chart plotter, just a GPS. That, as far as I know, that's not possible yet. But you can do, of course, as we talked about, using your iPhone, Android phone, tablet, that type of thing. If there's something in particular, a particular device that you had in mind, just send me that in a message as well. And Marcus says that he tried the free trial of the app and he's testing it now, and honestly, it's pretty freaking amazing is the quote there. So thanks, Marcus, for that. Does Navionics show fuel locations and detailed information? Fuel locations, so one of the features of the Navionics app is the search feature, which you can see the search icon in the upper left of the screen there, and that Paul is pointing to. And you can search for fuel using that search icon. And it does, some of the fuel stops do update their prices. So some of them will have prices. Some of them don't update their prices, so they're not updated. It's kind of, it doesn't draw from like how Google does, where it's real time all the time. but some of them do have the prices listed, but they do have the contact information listed. So if you do have a question, you could give them a call. And one other question, how often can you update your charts? You can update your charts as often as you want. When you purchase Navionics Plus, you get a year subscription and you can update it every single day if you want to. So that's the good thing about Navionics. You can update it as often as you want. Okay. So, Captain, can you tell us about what you do if you've planned a route and then while you're out there and sailing, the wind or the current or the weather conditions change? What do you do to decide if you should adjust course or if you should stay the course? Tell us about your experience.
Okay, so most of our winds are prevailing easterly winds. The Keys is actually east-west, not north and south. So when you're doing your trip planning, you want to keep in mind where those winds are coming from. Also, different times of the year can bring different conditions. I think what I get a lot of feedback from, and people that bareboat or people that I support a group of sailors that come through Boot Key Harbor. It's an association. Is that they are not prepared with sails. They'll put on maybe a big Genoa and all of a sudden get into a gustiness they can't control, and they've got too much sail up to begin with. Now, coming down from easterly wind, your biggest consideration is that of lee shores, getting sucked into a cove or a situation where you have too much sail up and you can't get out of it. So, for my students and for myself and going out for any decent amount of mileage, it's getting far away enough from land. So get away from the shore until you know when you need to put in. That would probably be the single biggest thing I could recommend to people is don't set up your trip plan to be so close to shore. Get out, enjoy the open seas. You're going to be much safer out there.
Yep, I think that's a good call out, especially for the Keys, since there's so many different islands and there some places that are pretty close together. So if you get in that situation where you're close to land, your chances of getting between the islands sometimes is slim if you have too much sail up. So I think that's a great call out. What is the best time of year for sailing in the Florida Keys? I know a lot of people say spring and late fall are ideal. You have more wind in the winter, and it's not hurricane season. Summer you have less wind, but you have the rainstorms that come with a little bit of wind sometimes in the afternoon. What's your favorite time of year to sail in the Keys, Captain?
Every day. People, our humidity is very different here than it is in Washington, D.C. And our it's hot for sure. But I think in 2016, it was completely glassy for the entire day. The Keys is, I think, is a great place to sail year round. This time of year, you're getting good, strong gusts, and it's cool. But most people coming down, that cool seems hot to them anyway. So I'm going to stick with every day is a good day to sail.
Yeah, I agree. I think sailing the Keys is definitely a year-round adventure. So those of you planning your vacations, keep that in mind. So I wanted to point out some of the fun things about the Florida Keys. And these are some of the things that I have enjoyed and we have enjoyed through the years. Columbus Day Regatta, that is a huge, just general boating activity. It is a regatta, but it ends in a huge party. And you can see on the right-hand side here, the boat, a picture, an aerial photo of one of the Elliott Key parties, Columbus Day Regatta. Definitely something that you want to prepare for. Take lots of fenders. Make sure that you're keeping a close eye out because there are a lot of boats in one small place. So don't take your brand new boat and hope it's not going to get scratched or touched. Have you been to Columbus Day Regatta, Captain?
I have not. I think I'm working too much, actually. I think I need to start taking some time off.
Yeah, you should do a Columbus Day Regatta guided charter.
I had 3 students in the Havana race from St. Petersburg, and that was good. And I have about 4 or 5 boats that go down for Fantasy Fest. So those events are an absolute blast.
Yeah, yeah. So Fantasy Fest is another big one. This one is also in October, but it's usually over the weekend of Halloween, and been to that a few times as well. And it is definitely a big party. So if you can, I would suggest going during the week because it is absolutely packed on the weekends. But the whole time is really fun. So if you can sail down there and anchor out. And there is a marina down there in Key West, but make sure you call for reservations early because Fantasy is extremely popular. Another one is the Florida Keys Seafood Festival. That's a marathon, and usually in January. And that's the picture in the upper left. Of course, they have more than just crab there, but that's another of my favorites. They have a lot of different kinds of seafood, and it's a really great opportunity to get a feel of the Keys seafood and the culture down there. Have you been to the seafood festival there?
Yes. I go every year. It's quite a blast, and there's a lot of boats that come into Buki Harbor, and now Ferro Blanco on the other side. Just walk across the
Exactly. This is a really good one.
city and has services in Key West. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of these are great for boating. The land portion is accessible by boat, and of course the water portion is also very amenable to bringing your sailboat. So a few of the overnight stops in the Keys. Captain, you want to talk about some of these stops? I know these are some of your favorites.
Okay, so I didn't put it on the slide, but derelict laws are now starting to prevent boats from anchoring around mangroves around the Keys. But that is not something that the U.S. Coast Guard, that I understand, will enforce during hurricanes. So while Marathon is a great place to stop, it's also along the Keys a great place to hide from, any bad weather. Buki Harbor is one of the most successful anchorages I've ever seen in the U.S., all the way from, Maine, and then, some anchorages off of Alaska. So you can go on the ball, we get shower facilities, you can stay in the anchor field, you can go outside of the Buki Harbor and get some shelter there. My favorite eats are Burdines, where the French fries are to die for. Really, all the restaurants in the Keys are just great places to eat. So that people know, Ferro Blanco is on the Florida Bay side, and that is a fuel dock and restaurant that we didn't have before. Pump out. So that's new this year for us. That's a big one. So Boca Chica and Stock Island has transient slips. So, but there's not a place in the Keys that I think is a bad place to be, just as long as you have depth in a dinghy. So I'm not a real fan of places to put in a slip. The Keys is a great place to just hang out. And
yeah, the Keys do have some really cool places that are boat up and great places that you can just stop in and get an amazing bite to eat and get a really good feel for the culture and the food in the Keys.
Yep, totally agree.
So one of the overnight stops that Captain had pointed out was the Buki Harbor. So just put a screenshot here of where it's located so you have an idea of where in the Keys the captain is talking about.
And am I live?
So as far as the routes through the Keys, we had some questions about some good routes through the Keys, and you had outlined a few, Captain. You want to talk about some of your favorite routes here?
Yeah, I think you know, this is it's definitely should be part of your trip. If um, these reefs are on top of their class, more fish in your face than you'll see in the aquarium. You have Sand Key, which is Penny Camp is a real famous one. Sometimes that's difficult to get into. And then, you know, the backside of the Keys is majestic to see. There's not any services back there. You can up through the 7 Mile Bridge. Some people go through Largo as well. But I think, you know, the funnest part is hitting all the
Think we're losing you, Captain.
Sorry.
So I think we left off at some of the backcountry, and some of the other captains' favorites are Sombrero Reef, Lou Key, and Sand Key. We do need to watch out for draft in some of these channels and around some of these islands. I just wanted to point out, and someone also pointed this out in the questions. Chester runs a catamaran from Miami and pointed out the difference in catamarans versus monohulls. And yes, that is a very good point, Chester. Thank you for making that point. One great thing about catamarans is the small draft. And just having such a small draft in the Keys especially will allow you to get closer to shore and not have to worry about, of course, running aground. So in some of these channels where you do need to watch out for your draft, you of course have a lot more places that you can go safely when you're in a catamaran, since the draft is so much less. So just kind of pointing out the difference in a monohull and a catamaran in the Keys. And the Keys are mostly, Captain, if we'll try it again, mostly sandy bottom, correct? From my experience, it's almost all sandy bottom. Is that your experience?
Yeah, sandy bottom, you know, coral shale. I mean, I want to talk about Sisters Creek for a second, because that's exactly kind of the medium you have trouble with. It's not that there's not a depth. It's knowing where that is, a shallow channel. And that's a lot of the Keys, is that, you know, running aground here, you're not going to lose your key because it's rock. You know, for the most part, it's just, you know, rough sand. But, you know, once you're on it, you're not going to come back off of it.
Right, and that's where CETO can be helpful as well. I know it was very helpful to us at times.
Am I still live?
Yep.
I don't let anybody bareboat a boat, a CETO membership or some kind of a service that gets them off of shoals. It happens that much. Inexperience will get you inexperience, and lack of patience is almost always going to get you in trouble here.
Yep, definitely. Patience is always a virtue, especially when you're sailing in areas that shallow waters are prevalent. So vacationing in the Keys. I know a lot of you that have joined are looking to come to the Keys for a vacation. And so you have a lot of different options for vacation in the Keys. Of course, bareboat is one option. If you want to just come down and rent a boat, and you use somebody else's boat, and you're just here for a week or two, that's one option. You can bring your BYOB, of course. You can bring your own boat. So we do have a lot of cruisers come through the Keys that have come down in their own boat. And of course, you can also come down for a land-based vacation, and then just go on day sails or sunset sails, and you can also take sailing lessons. Captain, you want to tell us a little bit about some of the things that you offer? I know you offer all of all except the bring your own boat, since these are your boats. You want to tell us a little bit about these things that you offer?
I actually have had a few people show up in their boats and say, "Hey, look, can you give me some ideas of where to go here in the Keys?" Which is kind of funny. We offer bare boats. We're an ASA sailing school. I know there's a few instructors on here. I honestly believe ASA nails it on the head, as does Colgate, in terms of sailing experience, preparation, and the tools you're going to need. I'm one of the not the few. There's a few of it. There's a bit of us that do it, but I only do private sunset sales. So I tend to cater more to the corporate events down here, and also the hotels and all. So that's kind of a fun, enjoyable thing to do. And then, of course, as an ASA school, we offer classes all the way up to celestial training. So thanks for the plug.
Great, thank you. Thanks for telling us about what you offer. And as for CETO, I know I've kind of talked about CETO here and there a little bit in this webinar. I have used CETO a lot, and the most I've ever used CETO has been in the Keys and in a sailboat. So definitely something that everyone that's on this call should be interested in if they're looking at sailing in the Keys. For new and renewing memberships, you can use discount code N, like Nancy, A2, as you can see on the screen, for a $20 savings. And this will also be available in the recording when you get the email with the recorded webinar, in case you forget the discount code. It's NA2. So thank you guys for attending. If we didn't get to your question, then I will answer them as best I can afterward. And you will, as I said, get an email with links, and you can also will get an email with a link to the newsletter sign up. So please sign up for the newsletter so that you can get emails about other upcoming webinars. We have webinars on everything from spearfishing and sailing and kayaking to bass fishing and how to use Navionics. I mean, everything you can think of, Navionics does webinars on. So, and if there's something that you're interested in learning about, definitely send me an email. Let me know what you're interested in, and we will look into having a webinar on that topic. So we're always open to suggestions. And thank you so much to Captain G-Dub for joining me and answering all of our questions about sailing in the Keys. You can find his website on this screen as well, sailflkeys.com. So check that out if you have any questions about how you can get down there and enjoy some chartering or some sailing lessons in the Keys. Let him know. Thank you everyone so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.